Hi, everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining our workshop today. My name is Chloe. I'm the operations manager at V4TP. So thank you so much for joining today. And we have a very special guest, Frank Liu, and also Artur will be joining us today. So let me start by introducing Frank. Frank is a travel wildlife photographer based in Hong Kong, and his published works have been featured across 6 continents in online media, magazines, print, and TV by the likes of National Geographic, Forbes, and Smithsonian. He has also offered wildlife photography workshops and webinars for organizations such as WWF and Coaching for Cause to raise awareness for conservation and the importance of ethical wildlife photography. So welcome, and thank you so much, Frank, for joining us today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Chloe. So I'll be doing a presentation, and together today we have Arthur, a friend of mine, and he is also a wildlife photographer based in Hong Kong. And as you'll see later, his photography style and the species that he focuses on are very different than mine. So hopefully you'll enjoy both our presentations today. Okay, so let me share screen. And if you feel comfortable, you can turn on your cam so we can see your faces as we do our presentation. Cool. Chloe, should I start?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So today we're talking about photographing wildlife during travels, where I'll talk about the photos that I took on my travels around the world. Mainly, you'll see a lot of them from Kenya, which is where this photo is taken. And I'll share a little bit about visual storytelling, maybe some tips for your contest that you have coming up. I'll also talk a bit about the ethics, things we have to remind ourselves as we're taking photos at the nature habitats of these animals. It's where they belong, so we follow the rules. And a little bit about myself to start off. I started taking photos in Hong Kong, cityscapes and people. And then eventually I found wildlife photography when I did a safari trip to Kenya, as you see in the middle photo. And from there, I really fell in love with the wildlife. And I want to use my work for wildlife conservation, raise awareness, and eventually I specialize now in wildlife photography, did some exhibitions and got some publications. So before the pandemic, I focused more on traveling and taking wildlife photos around the world, as you see on the left. And then since the pandemic started, I pretty much stayed in Hong Kong, with one exception of shooting in Yunnan. And I started to look into more macro photography using a different lens. So on the right-hand side, you see photos taken with a macro lens, very zoomed in, magnified, and you're gonna see a lot more work from Arthur later on, which will be quite similar. So what is wildlife photography? It's photographing wildlife in their natural habitat, either for artistic value or scientific. So artistic value obviously is very subjective. We want something that looks nice or provokes emotion. But the scientific value is also there because you never know what you find. So for example, I shot this in 2019, September in Kenya. And I was there just focusing on the Great Migration and other wildlife photographies that you saw just now. But what happened was during my stay, this very special spotted zebra fowl was given birth, and I was able to photograph it on maybe it was just a few days, so definitely less than a week. So this was pretty special find because It's the first spotted zebra found in Kenya, and a lot of scientists also looked into it, and they did a lot of like studies. So the scientific value does come even just from a photographer and not some researchers heading out specifically to look for these. A second example is this bluebeard bee eater. So this was shot November last year when I was in Yunnan. The bird itself, it's not a new species, but in that region where I was staying, in that mountain range, it was the first of its species to be recorded. And so I took a photo of this, I gave it to the local forestry department, and they added to the records. So now they're adding a new bird in their records, and they can say that this bluebeard bee eater does indeed exist in that region. So again, as a photographer, I was just out hoping to take some nice photos, but happened to stumble upon a new species locally and was useful and contributed to the local bird conservation. So why is this important for the animals? So at the end of the day, when we talk about wildlife conservation, it's a lot more about the animals than the people, although both are important and we need to focus on both. But for me personally, the photos that I take, I really want to focus on reconnecting the viewer, the people, with the wildlife and raise awareness, because I think it's very difficult for somebody to want to protect something they don't understand, or they haven't seen much, or they don't love. So let's talk about a bit of ethics as a wildlife photographer. And as you take the camera out and try to shoot wildlife, you'll be a wildlife photographer too. So there are things that we need to pay attention to. So number one is always have to keep a distance and not disturb the wildlife. And some might ask, how do you know if I'm disturbing the wildlife? Usually you can see quite clearly. They have body language, facial expressions, or maybe they will walk away. They want to create distance. So good rule of thumb is if they start to move away from you, that's probably them telling you you're getting a little bit too close. So you either want to just stay or even move backwards and give them some space. And respect the law, of course. Life bait we'll talk about, and signs of distress, and also posting. When we do social media or sharing online, we have to pay attention, and I'll go through each of them now. So on the left-hand side, you see a zebra file, this time an ordinary zebra, not the spotted zebra. And this is a very small file, and behind it, the background is actually its mother on the side. So as I was getting closer to the zebra file, this baby zebra, I was very careful. We were on a vehicle. We were moving closer very slowly, just to make sure that they are comfortable. And here you can see the file looking to my camera, but most of the time it has its back, or maybe it's on the other side of the mother, because they're very young. They do get stressed easily. So I had to be very careful, use a very long lens. And as soon as it showed a bit of stress, it walked away a little bit further. Then I say, stop, that's close enough. Take a couple shots for like 30 seconds, and then we left. So on the right-hand side, you have the tigress. She's busy, which I will talk about later. And also, again, when they're in the middle of something, maybe they're playing or they're hunting or they're feeding, you don't want to disturb them. And you just kind of have to learn from experience and give them space. So the law is always number one. So examples would be restrictions on drones or camera traps, or whether or not you can feed them, or camping. But in this case, I'll focus on the African safaris. So usually safaris, they have their own set of rules. For example, some parks, they say that vehicles have to stay on the road and you can't go off track. And in this case, this was my first trip to Kenya, and it was very sad because everywhere else was green, the grasses, but this particular area that we were driving through, it was all black. And as you can see here, so I asked my guide back then, and he told me apparently a tourist smoked a cigarette, which was already against the park rule, and he accidentally dropped it outside of the vehicle. So it burned this whole area, about the size of a football field, and which is very sad to see because it did not have to happen. And obviously, as you can imagine, affected the wildlife who lives there. So always pay attention to the laws. So talk about live bait. So the next image that I'm showing you is slightly graphic. And if you don't feel comfortable, look away or close your eyes, okay? 3, 2, 1. So in here, this photo, this is not a live bait. This is part of nature. This croc is just feeding as it should. But some photographers, they would want to create certain types of photos. For example, maybe not with the crocs, but maybe with birds or snakes and whatnot. They might feed them with food that is not natural to their habitat or their diet. So in this case, you're not only altering the natural behavior of the animal, the wildlife, but you're potentially also feeding them something that is not healthy for them or has no nutrition value for them. And you're doing more harm than good. So we don't condone it. Looking out for signs of distress. So here's the second and last graphic warning. 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we have a group of cheetahs. They just hunted down a small wild boar and a warthog. And so in this case, it's very specific to a safari where you are in a vehicle. So on the right-hand side, you see the vehicle that we ride in the safari park. So what happens is, if you go to Kenya and you want to look for cheetahs, lions, big cats, a lot of the times when they do hunt, a lot of these vehicles would follow because everyone wants to see their hunt, everyone wants to see them gather, it's exciting. But what happens is when we first got there were only 3 vehicles. So it didn't do too much of a harm, but 10 minutes later, a dozen of these vehicles, other tourists, they hear about it through the radio call, and they rush over and they want to see and also photograph this. What happened was they were surrounding these group of cheetahs, and then there's a potential harm for them because when they're feeding, other predators like the lions are much, much bigger than them, and they will come and attack them or steal their food. So same with the hyenas. The hyenas will also come after they're done hunting and try to steal their food. So when they do come, they might hurt these cheetahs. Because although cheetahs are very fast, they're not that big, they're not that strong compared to lions. And so what happens is, imagine on the right-hand side, if we didn't have the vehicles around them, they would be able to see very, very far and see the lions or hyenas coming towards them. But with the vehicles surrounding them, it creates a wall and they're not able to see very far. And so when the lions or hyenas do come close and appear within that wall created by the vehicles, it'll be too late for the cheetahs to escape. And the wall actually stops them from running away as well. So it's very dangerous for the cheetahs. And so what happened was we saw more vehicles coming in. So we decided to just take a few photos and we left and also asked the other vehicles, the guides, drivers, to also leave soon and do not create this harmful situation for these cheetahs.
Can I ask a quick question? Did
Yes.
did you have to wait like a long time just to I'm not sure if that's what you want to capture, but for when they're feeding,
Oh,
do you have to wait at a certain location, or do you have to was it just purely by luck, or?
oh, so in this case, in this Masai Mara safari, you have to pretty much stay on the track for the vehicles. So you're not really allowed to go anywhere you want. But also, again, there are a lot of vehicles, and we're being very mindful of where the vehicles are in our position. So usually you want, like as a photographer, you want to find that perfect angle. So you would arrive to the scene and see what they're doing. And then you look around the environment and where's the best place to park your vehicle to take these photos. So in our case, we didn't have many choices. So I just kind of wait at this spot and hoping for these two closest to me to kind of look my way. It's not perfect for me because as you see on the left top, there's a bit of a branch dangling and whatnot. But I just want to use this photo to share the point of ethics, because a lot of times it's very rare to get these kind of exciting shots, even though you see it all the time on Nat Geo and the magazines and whatnot. It's very, very hard to come by. It's very hard to come by a good angle or opportunity to take nice photos.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to treasure them. But then at the end of the day, the welfare of the animal is much more important than the photo itself. So if we stayed a lot longer and just wait and keep waiting, yes, there's potential chance for me to take a lot better photos, but it's also creating a lot of potential harm for the cheetahs. So you have to really balance what's more important for you as a photographer. And I think all wildlife photographers, the best ones, the top ones, they do value wildlife a lot more than their own, photos or safety. So yeah, it's a good reminder here, I think.
Great saying. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you for the question. Okay, so let's talk about what makes a good photo. So as a viewer looking at this photo, a good question to start with is being mindful of where are your eyes drawn to immediately. The first thing that your eye focuses on, in this case, I'm hoping it will be the tiger cubs. So they're sub-adults, I think 1 or 2 years old. So they're not babies, but they're definitely not in their full size. So they're brothers playing. And in this case, if you look at the background, it's very blurred, it's very plain, so that your eyes don't focus and wander in that area. It draws you to the tiger cubs. Is there a story being told? So in this case, it will be the two tiger cubs siblings playing. What do you feel as you're taking the photo? So this is what I focus on a lot in my photography, is what am I feeling on the spot as I'm taking the photo. So not too focused on capturing the best action or whatnot, but it's more like what am I feeling in that moment. So in that moment, it was us witnessing the mother who went ahead first, and then these two siblings were very naughty. They were just playing and not really following their mother. But yeah, it was a relaxed and peaceful afternoon. So that's what I'm trying to capture. And in terms of number 4, what do you want the viewers to understand? So this most likely will be for wildlife conservation in most of my work. And sometimes you're not able to really show that in the photo itself. So a small text or description that goes with your photos that can go a long way. So let's talk about a bit of the fundamentals, foreground and midground. So in this case, on the left, the foreground would be the grass on the left, just to show you what the foreground is. When you do focus on the midground, the lens wouldn't be able to focus on everything, so the foreground will be very blurry. And then behind this leopard, it's also very blurry. So you can use that to your advantage to draw the viewer's eye to where you want them to focus on. So on the right-hand side, the leopard is on the midground. There's not too much going on in the foreground, but in the background, you can see as well, it's also quite blurry. And it basically creates a scene of the habitat of this leopard. Also, the right-hand photo is one of my favorite photos. So background here in this case would be those hills and mountains, and the midground will be the oryxes, and there's not really any foreground. So when you're taking photos, do pay attention not only to the animal that you're shooting, but also what's in front of it and what's behind it. So sometimes it might make a very big difference if you just kind of step sideways one step and it changes the background and also the foreground. Just be mindful of that. So step one is be patient. So usually when we arrive and we encounter wildlife, we get very excited, we start shooting photos. But the best thing I would say to do is to take a few minutes and observe the wildlife. Also give them a chance for them to get used to you being in their presence. So in this case, I'll use this primate as an example. When I first arrived, they're curious, they look at you, who's this? Are you dangerous? Are you gonna eat me? Or can I eat you? So they're very alert and they don't move too much because they're observing you. And then after maybe 5-10 minutes, they get comfortable and they start to behave naturally again. They'll be playing with their friends, their family, feeding, sleeping, So I would say being patient usually pays off in wildlife photography because you allow them to behave the way that they would if you as a human weren't there. So it's a lot more natural. Usually they're more goofy and silly. They'll yawn, they'll flip, Yeah, so I like to be patient. Step 2 is choosing your camera settings. So on the left, we have the slow shutter speed. So maybe in chat, if you know what the exposure triangle is, or if you know what shutter speed is, type 1. If you don't know what it is, type 2. So if everybody knows, then I wouldn't, explain it too much. But if some people here are not familiar with it, I can talk a little bit more about shutter speed. So on the left, we have the shutter speed to capture motion. And as you can see, these wildebeest were running. So with a slow shutter speed, they will be blurry. And this is an artistic choice. You can, so I wanted them to be blurry when I was shooting them. And then on the right, they were also moving, but this time with a fast shutter speed. You see very clearly and very sharp, a lot of details. And as you can see here, it's like freezing the moment. So when do you use the fast shutter speed? So you can use that for birds when they're flying, and you'll be able to capture their wings sharp instead of just a blur. Or animals when they're jumping, leaping, as you can see on the bottom. It'll be a nice opportunity to use the fast shutter speed and freeze time. So with our cameras, we can choose to shoot horizontal or vertical. Usually it just depends on the subject or the frame you're focusing on. I would say if your focus is horizontal, then just shoot horizontally. If it's vertical, then shoot vertically. So here we have a tigress, as we have seen before, and a lion. Are you able to guess what they're thinking based on their expressions? I'll give you 3 seconds. You don't have to type it out. You can just think. So on the left, we have the tigress, and it's prowling and ready to hunt a deer. She's actually has her eyes locked onto a deer, very focused. And again, during these events, you don't want to make any sound. You don't want to move. You don't want to distract her. Even though some people might say they feel bad for the deer, but in this case, it's the same for the tigress. If she can't hunt, she can't eat, and she can't feed her cubs. So on the right, we have the lion observing the surroundings. He's very calm, relaxing, just resting. And you can see just from their body language and facial expressions. So capturing these will be able to help tell your story. Step 3 is composition. It's very important for photography. How you place your subject, what you include in your frame. So in this case, we have a long lens. They're able to shoot very far. It's a close-up to the face of the animals. So in this case, on the left, you have the Cape buffalo, and on the right, an elephant. So you see a lot of details on their face, their expression, and it's very different from the next photo. A wider shot of this oryx in Namibia, where you include the background, the sunset and the mountains. It's more about the whole frame and the environment and the atmosphere rather than just the animal. So I always like to include their habitat when I'm shooting wildlife photography. As much as I like the animals, I also like to show where they're living. I think it's very important. And usually the landscapes are very beautiful as well. So the top one was shot in New Zealand, and the bottom one was in Iceland. Here we have the tigers in India. On the left, you can see the tiger in the midground. The background and the foreground are trees, where I purposely put them there to kind of force the eyes to look towards the tiger. And on the right, we have a nice reflection. And then the final step is to experiment with the compositions and your camera settings. So on the left, we have black and white, also have a huge, just white negative space. So that would have been a very bright sky. And then on the right, I tried to focus on the birds and not the whole giraffe. So you only see a small part of the giraffe. So what happens when you don't see the animals? Because they're wild animals, they go where they want, and a lot of the times you don't find what you want to find. So in those instances, what I like to do is search for hints of these animals. In this case, it's in India, and we were looking for the tigers. We weren't able to find them for the whole day, but we were looking for hints. So paw prints on the sand and the scratch marks on the tree. Usually I like to take photos of these little details, and together with the images of the tigers themselves, tells a more complete story as well. So after taking the photos, we have to edit them, and there are some choices you can make. Obviously, we can do the color photos, but also black and white. In this case, on the right-hand side, we have the black and white. On the left, we have a monochrome. So monochrome just means that it's one single color, but with different shades. So on the left, I have the brown. And for me, I think because it adds a bit more of the earthy tone and it shows a bit more of the kind of the mood of the atmosphere in the natural habitat. And contrast, we have to think about as well. So on the left and right, they're both black and white photos. And as you look at the photo on the left, I chose to use black and white because the leaves were in different colors of green, some orange and yellow, quite distracting. So to use the black and white, I'm able to focus our viewers' eyes towards the lion and obviously the fangs. And on the right, if it was in color, it will not stand out as much because we have too much colors going on. We have the yellow and green grass, the trees, and the blue sky. So in this case, I use the black and white, and the trees and the giraffe stands out very much in front of the white sky and clouds. So for the contest, you have the choice of submitting photos as a single entry, meaning one photo tells the whole story. In this case, for one single entry, I think a bit more consideration has to be done for each photo. So in this case, I have the still butterflies. I have butterflies that are blurred and flapping the wings, and I have the plant. But another choice is to submit photo series. So multiple photos that tells one single story. But in this case, the photos has to be cohesive. So on the left, that's a collection. On the right, that's one collection. So how I decide whether my photo series is cohesive enough, usually is I kind of lean back, I squint my eyes, and if I can imagine all of them together being one single photo or one piece of artwork, usually that means it's cohesive enough. So with photo series, you can either focus on having the habitat or maybe the threat that they're facing as their common interest, or you can have just one scene, one species, and one story that you're trying to tell. So in this case, these three photos were taken of the same spider, and it tells the same story, but from a different perspective. So just a reminder, the submission deadline is May 22nd on World Diversity Day. Hope you enjoy shooting, and I'll pass it on to Artur.
Thank you so much, Frank. Those are some really beautiful images that you shared and stories. Thank you for that. All right. Hi, Artur.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So maybe Frank, you can tell us a little bit, about Artur to us for people that are not familiar with Artur.
Yeah, so Artur is a friend of mine in Hong Kong. He shoots a lot of macro photography, as you will see, very experienced with, the usually species that people are scared of, the spiders, the snakes, the lizard. Oh, and you're wearing a t-shirt with a snake on it as well.
King cobra, my favorite snake.
King cobra. So yeah, so hopefully you'll be able to start to love these kind of animals after his presentation and through his photos.
Thank you.
Okay, can I start?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so today I'll talk a little bit about local wildlife and photography. So my name is Artur. I'm from Poland. I moved to Hong Kong like 3 years ago. And since that time I shoot like everything I can, mostly snakes and insects and all other small things.
Small and beautiful insects.
Yes, they are beautiful. So did you know that Hong Kong is the home to the biggest moth? It's an Atlas moth. It's like around 27 centimeters wingspan. It's like very big moth. So
Wow.
you can see it in Hong Kong. And do you know how many moth species we have in Hong Kong? Anyone?
20? 30?
It's
Oh, hundreds? I don't know actually.
2,500 around. I think it's roughly 2,600 right
Wow.
now. And they discover new species all the time. So it's like number is rising. And how many species of butterfly? Can you guess? You can type in the chat.
Oh, is it just me? I don't see the screen share. Is it
You
just
don't
me?
see it. Oh,
Chloe, do you see the
Yeah,
presentation?
I don't see the screen sharing either.
Okay, try share screen again.
okay, I'll turn it off.
Oh, good. Oh,
Is it
okay,
now?
there we go. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay. So we have 2,500 species of moth and
Wow.
250 species of butterflies.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's a Atlas moth. The Chinese name of this moth is snake's head moth. You can see the head shape of snake on the tip of its wing. On the right side, there's an example of head of king cobra. It's a big moth, my favorite one. That's another beautiful moth in Hong Kong. It's called Luna moth. This is an adult male, and females are much bigger and different color. It's a pale green. You can see them in winter and early spring flying around. Very beautiful. That's around the time to see them. Okay, with macro lens, you can do like close-ups. This is the same Luna moth. This is actually female, and you can see like the big antennae. That's another beautiful moth from Hong Kong. So it calls emperor moth.
So where can you find all of these insects in Hong Kong? Because I think it's very hard, I think, or people just don't know how to identify them. But usually when you shoot these beautiful insects, where can you find them?
No, you can find them everywhere, actually.
Really?
The best places are probably country parks, and like moths, you need to obviously go at night because you will not see them at daytime. There are species of day moths, but most of them are at night. And yeah, they are everywhere. You just need to look closely.
Wait patiently, like Frank said.
Yes, exactly. This is the key. So they come with different shapes, different sizes, different colors. There are very big moths like Atlas moth, which is 27 centimeters. But most of the moths are very tiny. You barely see them. You have loads of beautiful butterflies. Butterflies, you shoot them at daytime. It's different than moths. With macro lens, you can include like all details and stuff, but you also can shoot like with your phone, obviously, because like phones have amazing cameras now. My favorite technique with butterflies is at night too, when they sleep on branches. So I can get like very close to them and include like the very close details. But you need to be lucky to find one. Okay, as a wildlife photographer, you always look for like original things, like perspectives and models, like those two caterpillars. The one on the right, it's mimicking actually snake. If you can see eyes in here and the snake tongue. And the other one is like very long and crazy antlers. Okay, with moths, as Chloe asked, you need to come at night, and there's different techniques. You can walk around and look for them with flashlight, or if you are a scientist, you can use your moth traps, like you see on the right, and they're using UV light and like a white sheet and stuff. So, and where, like, obviously you need to be scientist to do this, because it's illegal to trap moths on your own if you don't have a permit, but you can search near street lights. Like, moths are attracted to light, so everywhere you see like light in the forest or in the country park, like public toilets, those are great places for moths. Yeah, on vegetation, under leaves, on the leaves. You just need to be careful and look closely. Like here, can you spot the moth on this photo? Okay. It's here. It's this one. It's a hawk moth. It's a marumbaderas. Very beautiful moth, but super well camouflaged.
So you have to even watch where you're stepping, otherwise you could very much accidentally step on them.
Exactly, they are everywhere. Literally everywhere. Okay, so to photograph moths, you need a good flashlight and headlight to stay safe. This is the most important thing when you go at night to the forest. You need a good torchlight, because there's plenty different creatures in the forest, like snakes and wild boars and stuff. So with a flashlight and headlight or anything, you'll stay safe. You need a camera on your phone. And if you use the macro lens and flashlight, you need a light diffuser. You can easily make it on your own. It's a very simple process. You can type in Google how to make it, and there's loads of different tutorials. Everyone's using different techniques. So, if you go to the forest, like, it's good to read and learn about your target before you go and hunt on it, because it's very important to know the habitat, where to look for it. And good example. Oh, this is my quality control. Good example why we need to learn. It's this moth. It's a winter flyer in Hong Kong. You can only see them between December and February. You can look for them any other time, like summer, you'll never see them. But in December and basically winter time, it's very easy to spot them. That's why it's important to read about the animal you want to photograph. And like those scorpions, like, without knowing that scorpions glow under UV lights, it's very difficult to find them because they are very tiny. But with the UV light, it's super easy to find them because they glow very brightly. So with knowledge like this, it's very easy.
So all of the scorpions, if you put them under UV light, they're all they can all glow in the dark.
Yes. And
Wow.
there's many more animals that glow in UV. There's even frogs.
Wow. All types of frogs as well, or is it only
No,
like
no,
special?
there's one frog in Peru. Actually, I photographed it recently, and they're glowing under UV.
Wow. That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Okay, so about the butterflies, the butterflies are totally different than moths. So you usually want to use your telephoto lens because it's very difficult to get close to them. But with your phone, phones now have crazy cameras, so you can use your telephoto lens to get good photo. So you don't need to invest at start in very expensive gear. You can start with your phone. And where to go to look for butterflies? There is a butterfly garden in Pungyang in Taipo. It's a great place, loads of species. You'll see many butterflies there. Of course, Kaduri Farm, which is a great place for conservation, and you'll see not only butterflies but other animals too. And all country parks and butterflies are everywhere too. Okay, about the safety, telephoto lens is also great to photograph birds and other animals, like more dangerous animals like this bamboo pit viper, which you don't really want to get close. It's sleeping on the branch in Kaduri Farm in here. And photograph birds. Telephoto lens is good to keep a safe distance from the animal. And to get the best results, I usually try to shoot at the eye level with animal. It gives the good feeling, like of the photo. Whoa. Okay, so the biodiversity in Hong Kong is mind-blowing. It's really crazy. We have loads of species and animals in everywhere in country park. So it's important to protect it. So as a wildlife photographer, you can show other people and spread awareness by responsibly behaving around the wildlife animals. So you're like a teacher, you show other people how to be with animals. Okay, about snakes, I'm really big snake fan. So this is my favorite snake. You can guess. Do you know what snake species is this?
A cat snake?
It's a king cobra.
The one on your shirt.
Yes. It's a
King
biggest
cobra
venomous
would have
snake.
bigger, like, I don't know what you call that, but there's a what would you call that?
They make it hood.
Yeah, I thought that would be super big.
Maybe you are thinking about Indian cobra. Indian cobras are oval, and king cobras are not really. And you rarely see them because they're very scared of people, and then they prefer to stay away. So yeah, this is my favorite snake in Hong Kong. This is the biggest, longest venomous snakes in the world, and we have them in Hong Kong. So if you spot the cobra, what should you do?
Definitely not try to pet it.
Definitely not. Not to hurt him or kill him, definitely too. Stay at safe distance and let it go. They will live. The snakes will never attack you or anything if you don't do harm to snake or any other wildlife animal. It's you are safe and animal is safe. The other snake in Hong Kong is a Burmese Python. Fact about Burmese Python is the only species in Hong Kong protected by law. None other snakes are protected, which is sad actually. They should be all protected. In USA, they are very they treat them as a pets because there was like many released pets in the wild, and the population is very big now, and there's big problem with them now. So you can rarely see them in Hong Kong, but in USA it's very easy. And it's huge problem. So always. Oh, that's a probably most common snake in Hong Kong. It's a bamboo pit viper. It's a venomous snake, so of course, if you try to photograph it, always consider your safety and snake safety. Stay in safe distance. This is another beautiful animal from Hong Kong. It's a Chinese water dragon. It's a very common lizard in Hong Kong, if you know where to look for them. Actually, it's not native to Hong Kong. It's introduced in Hong Kong, but they do not harm local wildlife, and people consider them as it's okay to have them around because they don't do any harm.
I love how the hands are like hugging.
Yeah, this photo is made at night. So at night they sleep on branches like this. In daytime they are very active. They jump around and.
Are their eyes are always open even when they're sleeping?
Yes, they are. I mean, they close their eyes, but they never sleep 100%. They are very like alert about everything, because obviously the sleeping there's many different like predators and stuff. They can hurt them. So animals like that, they never sleep. The easy place to spot insects in Hong Kong are the handrails in country parks. You can see great number of insects on railings in country parks, and yeah, you can see mantises, jumping spiders, lots of jumping spiders, all kinds of insects. It's a very good place to start with. You can see jumping spiders like this one, or like this one in here, mimicking ant, having its meal. The other spider, I guess. Okay, so thank you very much. I think that's all from me. If you have any questions or anything, you can ask.
Thank you, Artur. And thank you, Frank, for sharing. I've learned so much just by being in the workshop, and all of those beautiful images. I know it takes a lot of patience. Can I ask a question? So for Hong Kong and shooting wildlife, you said there are a few places very good to see them. So you mentioned Country Park, or can you tell us a little bit about like different locations that you think we would be able to find more of the wildlife to shoot at?
Definitely, for me the best country park in Hong Kong is Tai Mo Shan Country Park.
Tai Mo Shan.
Tai Mo Shan. You can walk along the paths, and you just need to be slow and look around you and the leaves everywhere. You might be lucky and come across amazing animals. And even country parks on Hong Kong Island are great, like Aberdeen Country Park or Pok Fulam, all of those, really everywhere.
I believe even in the neighborhood parks, I think if kids go there with their parents, they can find a lot of insects as well.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is finding these small like insects and such is you don't have to travel long distances, like when you're looking for, let's say lions in Kenya. So it's pretty easy to do. You go to a park or you go on a hike, and you just have to slow down and really look closely. Yeah, so I like that about finding insects is you don't have to travel long distances. You can literally spend 10 minutes just standing in this one area and then just look under every leaf and branches.
Thank you. I have one last question to ask, just very curious. What is the most difficult wildlife shoot have you ever done?
Most difficult. I guess the most difficult ones are the ones that I weren't able to capture any photos. So I found maybe a paw print or a hint, but never actually even saw the animal. That's really, quite a few of those.
I think that's a quite difficult question because there's many different aspects of like finding your target and then taking the actual photo of it. Even if you find it, it's like sometimes it's super difficult
to get a good angle.
Yeah, good angle. Even bad angle.
Even any angle is kind of hard. But I think a good point to remind everyone is shooting wildlife photography. You really have to, it really does trains your patience, because most of the time you don't get the photos you set out to do. And you just have to be okay with it and move on and continue to look for the next animal. So be prepared that you won't get all the photos you want to get. I think that's important.
That's awesome. It's also part of a training for mental toughness to not give up, right? And to always keep trying and trying until you get like the good shot. So I think that's very important message out there as well. Well, thank you guys so much for today's workshop. And if you guys are interested to see some of the work and even to see today's workshop recording, you can go to our website, lumifoce.org. Everything will be uploaded and updated on there. So you can see all the recordings and also upcoming workshops as well. So thank you all so much today for joining us. And thank you, Frank and Artur.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you again. We have more workshops coming up, and I'll type in our website again very quickly so you can see what we have for next week. And as well, for this Thursday, we have another workshop hosted by a book author and also a Canadian not photographer, but writer. So if you guys are interested about bees, if you are interested about publishing a book, please join us again this Thursday at 4:30, same Zoom link, and please check out our website. Thanks, everybody.